Maria, let's start today's episode of Just a Spanish Phrase with a question.
Renzo, you and your questions.
I
You're
know.
scaring me.
We like to do that, but this was pretty simple. Perhaps it cuts a little deep, but would you consider yourself a leader or a follower?
You know me, I always like the middle ground. Sometimes I'm a leader, sometimes I'm a follower, depending on the situation.
So diplomatic.
Sorry, I didn't answer your question.
No, that's okay. That's okay. And by the way, to our listeners who are following this show, Just the Spanish Phrase, this, of course, is the podcast where we dive into the origins and meanings of very interesting Spanish idioms that you can then discover on our main show, News in Slow Spanish, where we use them in dialogues and keep you current with news from around the world while you learn Spanish.
So here we speak English, except for the Spanish phrase, obviously. And then in our shows, News in Slow Spanish and News in Slow Spanish Latino, everything is in Spanish, including the phrase. And you can find a huge catalog of idiomatic expressions that you can incorporate into your Spanish vocabulary.
But forgive me, Maria, I am going to jump in and take the lead here, take control, because today's phrase is all about leading. It is tomar la batuta.
Oh, okay. I was thinking how to translate that into English, and I have no idea.
Well, literally, it would be to take the baton.
The baton? Is that how you call the orchestra director? Like batuta?
Yes, the little stick,
Yes.
the little wand. It kind of looks like a wand to me.
It does.
Not to diminish the work of the maestros, the directors of orchestras.
They do magic.
They do. Hey, maybe that's why it looks like a wand, because it is really impressive what they can do. But back to the phrase itself. Yes, the batuta or baton is the wand or stick that orchestra directors use to keep the rhythm and direct the orchestra during a performance. However, what's really interesting about this phrase, so tomar la batuta, take the baton, in English, it recalls passing the baton, which is something slightly different. It is passing the baton in the context of track and field, of racing.
Actually, passing the baton is the absolute opposite of tomar la batuta.
Exactly.
Because tomar la batuta means, okay, that's it. I'm in charge moving forward. I'm going to take the lead, and it's going to be me making the calls.
Yes.
When you pass the baton, it's like, okay, I'm done with this task. Now you take it.
Exactly. It's about teamwork. It's about passing the torch or passing the baton to the next person. But the nuance there is really interesting. It's collaborative, and it's like not to make this sound political, but a peaceful transition of power. But tomar la batuta, like you said, is really different. It's assertive. It's taking the lead, taking control.
Everybody shut up now. Now I'm the leader. That's pretty much it. I'm going to tomar la batuta and tell you what to do and how to do it.
Yes. So, voy a tomar la batuta and tell you about the origin of this phrase. Like I mentioned, it comes from the world of classical music and orchestra and musical directors. So the batuta, that wand that we were talking about, it comes from an Italian word, batuta, which means to keep the rhythm, to keep the beat. And it itself comes from a Latin word, batire, which means to whip or whip the air. And what's really interesting about this is that long before they decided to use a wand to direct a musical band or an orchestra, the directors would just use their hands, which makes sense, right? Use their hands, and they would keep the rhythm with their feet. They would click their heels. But as bands became larger, right? A symphony orchestra, how many instruments are in them? Sometimes 50 or more, right?
Yeah.
A very large symphony. So if you're in the back row, you're not going to see the small details of a director waving their hands around. So adding that batuta, that baton, that extra length and that sharpness, also, it's usually, I think, made like the really fancy ones out of bone. So they're white and they stand out in a dark room. That lets everybody follow much more precisely the gestures of the director.
So the batuta was incorporated into the orchestra just so you could follow the movements of the director?
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating. That makes me think, of course, of our beloved Venezuelan orchestra director, Gustavo Dudamel. I don't know if you've ever seen him directing either the Orquesta Sinfónica of Venezuela or any other orchestras. He was in LA for a while and Germany too. I see him in New York. It's a show. Seeing a director direct with so much passion, it's priceless. It's incredible.
I have to agree. And before watching him, I've never seen him in person, but before watching him direct, I always thought of the maestro, the director, as kind of disappearing into the not background because they're literally in front, but taking second stage to the main event, which was the orchestra. But Dudamel literally and figuratively takes the batuta. Toma la batuta. He stands out. He really looks like he's in control. And the most interesting thing that I've seen was actually a rehearsal. I saw a video of a rehearsal where he was directing the orchestra and hyper focusing on one detail, one moment where the strings start in the song, but then the horns join. And he was going over that moment over and over just to get the intensity and the timing perfectly right. And by the end of that rehearsal, this video that was like 10 minutes long, I could see, not even being there, I can only imagine what it sounded like. But in a small screen on my computer, I could really see the difference.
It's amazing. So he needs to tomar la batuta.
Yeah.
And going back to the initial question, are you a follower or are you a leader?
Oh, okay. I'm gonna be really honest because as much as I would like to take the middle ground, and as much as I would like to say that I'm a leader, I think if I'm honest with myself, I'm mostly a follower.
Interesting. You know, I was thinking now that I had a little bit more time to answer your question. Personally, I prefer to have accountability with somebody. For example, I meet deadlines better if I have a boss waiting for that deadline. I go to the gym more if I have a trainer waiting for me to show up. You know, when I self manage, I'm not as efficient as when I have to be a follower and I have a leader that I, answer to.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's.
I think I have a little bit of that too.
Yes.
Yeah. But I will say there are times when taking the baton, tomar la batuta, is necessary and I can step up. I know how to do that and take the lead. It's just that I think my nature is to be a follower and a team player.
I wonder if you know the Myers-Briggs test that measures if you're introverted or extroverted. I wonder if there's a test to know if you're a follower or a leader, or if many of us are just better at deadlines. Because every time I talk about that, I need a deadline or I need somebody to answer to when I'm like procrastinating too much in a project. I wonder if we're all like that. Every time I say that, people say, "Oh, I'm exactly like that," or if there's people who are like, I cannot stand having a boss. I need to be my own boss, and I always meet my own deadlines.
I've definitely met people on both sides of that question. So that's a perfect question, actually, to ask our listeners. If you enjoy this show, Just a Spanish Phrase, leave us a comment on one of our episodes. Let us know if you're a follower or a leader, right? And if you know about any tests, because I would definitely take it.
That would be interesting to know. All right. So thank you so much for joining us in another episode of
Just a Spanish Phrase. And now we pass the baton to you.
Adios.